All right, welcome to Force Multiplier. My name is Lorenzo Valdivia, and I'm your host. Today we have with us Keto. Keto, welcome to Force Multiplier. Thanks for being a guest on this week's episode.
Hey, thanks for inviting me, Lorenzo.
Hey, Keto, if you don't mind, would you mind telling the listeners a little bit about yourself, what you do, your law enforcement experience, and whatever else is you'd like to share?
Sure. My name's Kerry Murakami. Everybody calls me Cato. Um, I just retired earlier this year, giving me 28 years in law enforcement. Just retired out of a small suburb north of Chicago, but I'm still here in the city. Um, with that agency, I was a DT instructor for 25 years. Kind of transition out of DT, the term, into combatives. And then when I became a firearms instructor, and then towards the end, I became a scenario-based scenario-based training instructor, and where we really combined a lot of our training, hand to hand and firearms and everything in between. Um, then in late 2020, I kind of saw where the world was going, and I didn't really like it. I didn't really like a lot of the training that was being offered. So I started my own business, which at the present time I'm really passionate about, and it seems to be doing pretty well right now. So um, I would say really what really put me kind of over the edge with at least here in the Chicagoland area, is that um, my agency basically was approached by the risk management company that covers, the village, and basically they took notice on we train a lot, and that our officers weren't getting injured uh, comparably to other departments. They also recognized that our arrestees weren't getting injured either. So my chief and deputy chief, we had a conversation. They put me out in front of the risk management agency, and they risk management agency eventually became put us in a preferred provider status. So that's really put me out in front of about 70 different agencies. I have a lot of chiefs contacting me
That's awesome.
in regards to training. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing right now.
No, that's great. So, talk to us a little bit more. You were saying earlier that you started a business here. You saw a need in there, and you've kind of filled that need. What was that you saw prior to, right? That kind of sparked you for, like, hey, we got to do something here.
Sure. So probably about 10 years ago, there's a video out on YouTube called Original Taserless, or The Original Taserless. You can hit it up on YouTube, and it's two officers trying to control a guy on a warrant. Um, the guy's laying in a fetal position, basically on his side, knees bent, looking up at the guy, pleading with them. He essentially kind of recites some poetry, does some, he sings.
Hmm.
Um, these two officers can't control this guy. They deploy a taser, drive stun him. The guy gets up, runs away. And I'm like, no way is that happening to me. And no way is that happening to my guys. So I started a quest of looking for like a two officer control tactic, because in most cases that uh, we're having two officers on an arrest,
Hmm.
and that was pretty tried and true in the Chicagoland area. So um, I started asking around and playing around, and um, I actually got this from Cliff Byerly of Hill Country Combatives, and you know, I asked Cliff what he was doing. He showed me. I played around with it, brought it back, played around with some more, brought it to the jiu-jitsu gym, played around with it a little bit. And, to me, it really just was going to work. So I introduced it to the training cadre at work, and we started playing around with it. And the next thing you know, we're we're implementing at a department training, and I only had a small block, so I taught the end of control and arrest. And that's
Okay.
just what we call it, to us, control and arrest. I taught the end portion of it because I had limited time. And then as time went on, I started increasing. So, okay, look, here's the end result. We're going to build on that. So that led to the takedown, the turnover, and whatnot. So
Hmm.
that was kind of what sparked, and probably the biggest game changer for our department.
Agree.
And during those years, I offered multiple agencies to help them out with training programs, and they wanted nothing to do with it. And
I've run
oddly,
into that too.
they're looking at me now. So um, but there's other things.
Right.
Most agencies are trying to implement a ground fighting component to their training, and don't get me wrong, I think you got to implement some ground stuff, but if you're not implementing striking or wrestling, you're missing out on you know 89 degrees of uh of a fight.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
um so there's just other components that need to be addressed. um you
Let's
know
let's
yeah.
talk about that for a minute, because I think that that's something we haven't really hit on the podcast yet, and it's something that I'm a firm believer in. And sometimes when you bring up, hey, we're going to teach your officers to strike, right? The heads of departments and they look at this and they're like, whoa, whoa, hang on. Hey, I was down with the control stuff, but I'm not okay with the striking. And
Mhm.
I think striking is important for an officer to learn. An officer who knows, in my opinion, an officer who knows how to strike properly, um, and when to strike is not a danger, right?
There's your
Um,
key right there. Yeah.
yeah, and you know, s- these techniques that we learn, right? They're great and they work, but there's an element of a strike that has to be put in there at certain situation. Bad guys on top of you, and you're trying to move and you can't. Maybe you need to deliver that distracting strike, right? That thing to change a little bit of mindset, or gain a little bit of ground, if you will, so that you can um, get out of there and control this guy with as least force as possible. But what are your views on striking, and how have you implemented that, or how have you received any resistance on that, or
So so one, I'm a firm believer in striking. I don't practice it as much as I used to when I was younger. um
it
but
hurts?
contextualized striking actually opens things up for a lot of, I mean, just like in jiu-jitsu, right? You set up your opponent for whatever technique you're working for, right? But if all you do is that one technique, right? Let's say you're going for an armbar, but if you don't set it up with a choke,
Mm-hmm.
you're probably not going to get the armbar. So, and so instead of setting it up with a choke in jiu-jitsu, uh, I throw a strike, and that forces him to give me his arm. Um, I mean, look at a lot of the Gracie actions way back in the day,
Right.
right? Open palm strikes, force the bad guy to give up his back, or roll over and give up his back. Hence, then we finish with the rear naked choke. And again, contextualize that for law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, if you're still using, you know, use of force continuums to teach use of force, which I don't necessarily have a problem with, to teach levels of force, right?
Right.
But if you're using that, we can strike. There's nothing that says that we can't.
Correct.
Um, and where we get lost is that, um, you know, when an incident erupts and it ends up on social media, the administration of that town, village, city, whatever, they're not saying, well, all those strikes were contextually okay, right? And which would kind of diminish the incident. Instead, they're like, well, I mean, here, I want to say it was Washington, D.C. Um, there was a 3 officers.
Guy
They
with
were
his arms
tussling
hidden.
with a guy, and one guy starts
Yeah.
striking, right? And they put that guy on leave, or through actually all 3 guys. And I'm like, what? I'm like,
And let's set up that scenario. The one you were talking about. If we're talking about the same one, it was the three officers. They were trying to get arms out from a suspect. He had his arms
right,
hidden under him,
right,
and there was two officers working on the arms, while the third officer was continuously striking the subject in the head and the shoulders and
right,
upper body. So that's the one that we're talking about.
right. I believe that was Washington
I
D.C.
believe so.
Right, and so yeah, in contextualized striking is a thing. Um, so yeah, as far as blowback from that, I haven't seen it from my old agency. My old agency, we actually consulted with an attorney in regards to this guy who actually represents a lot of cops,
Hmm.
and they were finding that a lot of the towns that basically omitted striking from their curriculums and their policies were getting into trouble because their officers in the thick of it were contextualized striking
Right.
the bad guy, and because it wasn't and I don't necessarily agree with having it in policy per se, but wasn't in their curriculum, that they were getting in trouble for it
Hmm.
civilly. So uh no, I firmly believe that striking should be in your curriculum. You should contextualize it, you should train it, and give your guys just another tool. You give them a taser, which
Right.
when I used to teach taser, I would tell people it's a 15-foot jab.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
It's a
I'm
hell of a jab, but it's a jab.
right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the next thing to hit you was me.
Mhm.
I when we trained taser, if we got good probe connection, the moment the taser deployed, I took the time from where I was standing to where the bad guy was, which is outside of 10 feet, to recognize whether, hey, do I have good probe connection, do I not have a good probe connection, and I'm moving forward. The next thing to hit the guy besides those probes was me, and I was taking him down. The problem is it's trained incorrectly. Their guys are just deploying the taser. They're busy saying taser, 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 and then they're watching this guy flop around if they actually get good connection. And then then when they realize the 5-second ride's up, they're like, oh, I got to hit him again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you don't. Yeah, I mean, if you move and you train with it, right? Get in there. One of the things I always tell my guys when I train them in their striking, and I think it helps them to realize, right, not to go overboard with this, not to move into that excessive level, is remember you have to answer for every strike that you give, right?
sure.
Every strike has to be justified. So to sit on top of somebody and just go to town on their face, if you can't justify every strike that you threw in there, then maybe you need to go to a different option, or maybe striking isn't what you should do at the moment, right?
Right.
That's one way that I tell my guys when I train them. We do a whole 4-hour block on just strikes.
Sure.
We talk about that, and then as we train uh, techniques and positions, I'll tell them, hey, take the next 15 minutes and work through your escape from the bottom. But I want you to move, and then I want you to stop and figure out what strikes are available, and then move a little bit more, and then find strikes are available, so that if you find yourself in this situation, you already know what options are available, right? Now you'll know an elbow is not available here, but maybe a palm heel is, right? Maybe I can't knee from here, but maybe a hammer fist will work here. So
Sure.
that's one way that we've trained it, and I found that it's effective. Depending on the officer for that.
Right. I mean, so today at the gym, I teach a weapons based class, and it's free for law enforcement, and we do have some civilians that show up, but we were working on a specific position where we have control over the pistol with basically two hands. And I said, hey, look, for anybody who strikes here, while you guys are moving, you know, give yourself a 20-second go, um, throw some strikes and see if your strikes um, are not only effective, but and we weren't really hitting
Right.
hard, but 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 run through this for 20 seconds, go back and forth, do it, two times each, and then let's discuss this. And the overall arching consensus there was like, man, I don't want to let go of the gun. I don't want to, like,
Right.
I understand throwing strikes, and I don't, and so I said, look, um, it's one thing for me to say, maybe this isn't an optimal time to throw strikes. But it's a little different when you experience it and you're like, yeah, I don't want to let go of the gun.
Right. Yeah.
Throwing a strike, I understand it. Um, you know, a knee, maybe a foot stomp, um, but to actually take one hand off the gun, throw a strike, and then put the hand back on the gun. Um, they were realizing like, I'd rather have the control aspect first,
Right.
and then maybe get to a better position and then strike, Um, so yeah, I think the biggest thing is you really have to contextualize it. And, um, you know, I, I, when, when you start, so if you're talking to an admin and you throw in the liability, um, they'll usually perk up. Right. And you have to train striking really, um, I mean, just like everything, you have to train it. There has to be like if you throw pitter patter strikes, right? There's nothing on the line there. Like I don't have to
Right.
move my head offline. I could take every punch because it's just pitter patter. Um, but if you throw it too hard, now most people haven't been hit before. Um,
We're gonna talk
and
about that. Remember that.
sure.
We're gonna come back to
And then well, so yeah, so they haven't been hit hard, and so now you're risking a potential injury. And I'm not saying you shouldn't train hard, you shouldn't be hit hard, but they should be prepared for it if you're understanding the range of like, okay, hey, look, we're doing some light sparring, and then give them examples and have them see and feel, even if you're just hitting them in the
that.
shoulder,
Right.
like this is the light striking that I'm looking for. um this one might be a little too hard, this one's too soft, this one's just right. And then bring bring on the exposure of the training from there, right?
Absolutely.
um and then, so like you mentioned, being hit hard at all. I mean, I've just recently talked to a chief and I said, hey, chief, you know, in the last, I'm going to just pick 5 years. In the last 5 years, have you hired anybody that you felt has never been in a fight, that's never even thrown a punch, let alone been hit by a punch? And the chief was like, oh yeah, I 5 years is just, he's like, I could probably push it to 10. And I go, okay. And I go, so you're offering your guys 4 hours of DT once a year, and you think that when shit goes sideways, that those somewhere a technique out of those four hours is gonna pop out? And he was like, you
What's
got a
gonna pop
point.
out is I just got hit. I don't know what it's a shocker the first time you get hit in the face. Like
Right. Yeah. And wouldn't you rather be hit in the face in training than on the street?
yeah. So and one of the things, so I teach at a police academy. That's my full-time job, and I head up the DT there. And when I got there, one of the things that they did not do was a punch day, right? At the DT. And same thing, I fought for it, and finally they gave it to me. They said, you know what? Go ahead, right? Because I'm a firm believer. that every police officer that graduates police academy should be punched and slapped in the face before they leave that academy in a controlled environment, right? I don't, I'm not talking like I'm just gonna walk up to you one day and just slap you and be like, there, now you've gotten it, right?
Sometime in the next three
Yeah,
months, I'm going to slap the shit out of you.
don't
Yeah.
know when you're gonna be walking down the hall. No, but in a controlled environment, and same thing as I'll ask my students. I'll have them close their eyes because nobody wants to, admit in front of a bunch of other guys and people that are gonna be police officers. They've never been punched or slapped, but don't make guys close your eyes. Put your hands up if you've never been punched, never been like actually punched in your face. And over half the class will raise their hand. And so we have a punch day, and
At
uh,
least half were being honest.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, and so we do a day, and I mean, we don't go crazy, right? Controlled environment. We want them to. And the way I tell my guys is, I want you to hit your partner hard enough where they know they got hit, but we're not hitting them hard enough where they're going to sleep. We can get right before a little bit of stars, but I want your partner to know they got hit, right? I want it to cause a little reset in their head where they go, "What just happened?" And I
Hmm.
want that strike to come. They'll do like a sparring. It'll be like our last culminating event of all the DT. So they'll put their skills to use. We'll do like a bad position. Hey, police officer, you're on your back. Bad guy's mounted. Get
Sure.
out. Um, and we talked to them afterwards, and they're like, "Man, if this would have happened to me on the streets, I do not know what would have happened."
Yeah. Again, better to have it done in training than on the streets, right?
Yeah, and it goes back to departments are scared, right? This we don't want the liability. Um, you know, Sorry guys, I hate to tell you, but you're accepting more liability by not letting your guys train on this.
You hit the nail on the head there. When you don't support your guys and you don't give them good quality training, what do you really expect to happen on the street?
Yeah,
What do you think the real outcome is going to be? Giving them quality training, giving them quality tactics is huge. Um, like you and Jay discussed was the last week, or Jay mentioned something about, we had a conversation in Ohio in regards to 10 black belts. You say, hey, okay,
yeah,
give me your favorite arm bar from whatever position, right? And every black belt's going to have a different armbar. They're gonna have slightly different technique. They're gonna put arm placement, hand placement, leg placement, whatever.
details will
But
be different.
everything comes down to, uh, you know,
Right.
the principles of how to finish this armbar. Um, the arm only, bends in one direction, right? So, um, you know, understanding that at the black belt level, like you can technically make a minute error on a lower ranking belt but still finish the armbar because you understand the overall arching
Right.
goals, right? The overall tactic. So um you know having having a bunch of techniques are awesome, but we're so strapped for time and money in law enforcement training that you give them some of the fundamental concepts and then let guys play with it. um one of my biggest classes is this two officer tactic class, and I said, look, these are the techniques, but you do whatever you want. The overall tactic is what's important.
Right.
Knowing that you and your partner are on the same page, or you and your teammate, or you and your coworker, that's huge. And also just having the confidence, because we've all been on the street with officer X, and you're like, oh, I don't want this guy coming to back me. i'm
Right.
I'm going to call so and so on the cell phone and have, hey, just show up, just be over here, because I trust you and I don't trust this person.
Right.
You don't want that in, that's really toxic. um and so are um, so are the techniques that clearly don't work that we're still teaching.
Mm-hmm.
That's toxic. You'll have guys come to training and be like, yeah. Let me just get my reps in, and so I can get out of here. Like, because they know that they're never going to use whatever pressure point or whatever it is.
Right.
Um, so, when you start giving them skills that actually work, and then, the buzz goes around the department. Hey, so and so, they use this. So and so, they use that 2 hour tactic. That stuff really worked. And you start explaining more and more about like the stuff that's really effective, like wrestling,
Right.
like striking, like jujitsu, like combative sports that really work. Um, you know, that stuff catches on. Um, you know,
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I always tell people with that, is there the the other programs that were out right during the uh, 80s, 90s, those were great for their time.
sure.
Um, Times evolved, right? I mean, every Saturday night there's a UFC fight on, right? Or a Friday night, right? Every weekend. And if it's not UFC brand, it's another company out there. People
Right.
are always watching, right? Readily available on YouTube, and this is what people are learning and doing. And even those YouTube black belts, if we will, right? Those guys who they just watch YouTube, right? Eh, After a while, they may not be the best, but against somebody who doesn't know and doesn't train, they're pretty dang good. And we have to evolve what we do and train as police officers based off of what they're doing, right? They don't play to our game. We have to play to their game.
Yeah. That's huge. I think the biggest way to get around, not get around all that. Like I don't focus on the techniques that we're training.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I just focus on the culture. uh, Over time, the culture just started to demand that you understand the concepts of fighting, which is basically what I was trying to get across. Combative sport, um, con- the control aspect, especially, the culture just demanded that you did your portion so that your partner could do his portion. And by working, having a little bit of teamwork, that we could effect an arrest pretty much without incident. And by having that culture, that just is really what pushed all training. Like, when ammo was cheap and ammo was abundant, we would go down and we'd have mini competitions
Right.
because we could. Um, the culture demanded that you shoot at a high level. Um, and that that took a long time. That took a long, long time to perpetuate. I mean, here I retired as a patrolman, so I had zero rank. Um, I did lead a lot of the training, um, but it was just I just saw these gaps, and I just started plugging these gaps and filling it with uh, obviously culture, and then good tactics, good techniques, and things kind of evolved on their own.
Right.
Um,
And
but
and the
go ahead.
mindset piece, and then the mindset piece of that, right? That's a big one that I feel a lot of officers are hurting or are lacking in it. And a lot of people don't talk a DT instructors wise. Is you got to have that mindset behind being prepared for this type of stuff.
Yeah, so uh, I don't mean to harp on some of these DT instructors who
No,
don't.
and understand like that's not our goal, right? We
Right.
will they know what they know, and they
Right.
don't know what they don't know, right? There was a time where I didn't know a lot about DT,
Sure.
so yeah, I don't look at it as that way either. So
Right. But um, I'm pretty critical of the industry. I'm pretty critical in my video breakdowns. And you know, if you're a DT instructor and all you do is go to get your 40-hour cert and that's all you're going to do, you're not going to train outside. And, that is the extent of the mindset that you can give. Cool. Stay in your lane, right?
yeah,
Um, Stay on the on ramp of the expressway, right? I'm sorry, but I want to teach over here on the express lane where we're going 70 plus miles an hour, because that's real world. Um, if you want to stay over here, cool. You can stay over there. I have zero problems with that. It doesn't take very much for you to train a little bit outside of work, and then you can start, turn that left turn signal on, and you can start merging
merge
over
in,
further to the left.
right?
Um, you know, but till you do that, till you start getting punched in the face on a regular, till you start wrestling, till you start training jujitsu, and you don't need to get a black belt. You just need to go train a couple
Oh,
days a week.
no, and that's a good topic. There was a department that I was at where me and a couple others that trained, we had offered the department multiple times, hey, we'll put on training for you guys. We'll put on training. We'll put on training, right? We'll put on free training, right? We teach at a police academy. We'll put on free training for you guys. And they never took us up on the offer. And they sent a young individual into law enforcement up to a 40-hour course to be a defensive tactics instructor in a program that's been around for a while. And he came back, and they had him put on a 16-hour training for police officers on how to defend themselves. And I sat back and I went to it because I wanted to see what this kid was going to bring with no martial arts, no DT. I mean, literally what he learned in 40 hours, and just even the people asking him questions and him going, I don't know, this is what I learned last week, right? There's that aspect of it too, of you know what are you bringing to your guys, um, from those two levels, like you were saying, that guy that goes to that 40-hour course every couple of years to recertify.
Yeah. I think, I mean, that's part of the problem with the industry, my personal opinion. Like some of these certified courses, right? So I teach a X number of hour course. I see you once every 2-3 years, and then you're supposed to come back for like 2 days refresher, is now you're recertified. Um, I've been asked to certify some of my classes, and I'm still trying to figure out a better way. Um, my personal opinion is I could teach you what I need to teach you in a couple days, and then in a couple months you're going to come back to me for a couple more days, and then a couple more months you're going to come back and see me for a couple more days, and the certification process is going to be you training every couple of months so that you don't forget this stuff. um I don't have the answer really.
and and that's something I've actually done with my curriculum. Here is I have a 116-hour curriculum, and they have to come essentially 16 classes, and then they'll get their certification, their post at the end of that, right? So it's a commitment to make yourself better, to keep going, right?
Sure.
Just an idea, a way that I've
Yeah,
I've done
no,
it, and
that's uh,
it's a hard one.
I think continuing education is right. I mean, that's why we spend so much time on the mat, right? I go to train, um and I trained myself as a student. And here's another issue, right? You become an instructor, and then you're never a student until you go to the instructor class again, right? I've seen firsthand instructors who are never a student, and then they're put under a little bit of stress in another instructor class, and
Right.
then they crumple. And so, again, one of the things that I did at my old department, hey, just because you're an instructor, I don't mean shit. You're still going to be a student. You're still going to run through all the evolutions. Um, I want to see you, you know, I want to see you teach this back. And I had mentored these kids for my last 5 years. I mentored kids because I knew I was going to retire. So there was no way I was just going to leave a department with guys who didn't train on the outside.
Right.
Most of my guys do. And no way was I going to leave them with a curriculum that they didn't know how to teach. So, I don't have the end result, but I think, I know ongoing, consistent, frequent training is the answer. And that's just what they need to do. So how to implement that is a certified class. I'm
Right.
not 100% sure what I'm going to do yet.
And how to get those officers there, right? That's always our big, the world may never know question is, how do
Right.
we get these guys in there and training? And, it's by those officers that are training of, continuing to, hey, man, come and train with me. We work on the same shift,
Right.
let's do this together. And maybe one day we'll get there.
Yeah. So I've had several other departments, small departments, come approach me, and they're like, so what do you think we should do? What should be the change? And I go, look, I don't necessarily have the answers. These are just my opinions. But Marietta, Georgia did the whole jujitsu, whatever, from the academy, right? And I think that's a great start. I think that's a great way to make your guys train, right? You're literally forcing change in the culture.
Hmm.
You're you're having your guys train and same thing. You're a small agency, you train, you already mandate your department to train whatever 4 hours, 8 hours once a year, right? um why can't you mandate them to do that twice a year, four
Right.
times a year, once a month? it's it's a matter of the administration saying, hey, we need change, this is what we're going to do, and then we should just start implementing the change. Um, and then obviously there's a lot of infrastructure in there that you got to
Right.
take care of. But um,
Well, not only
no,
that, but the reduced liability that's going to bring on your department from this, right? That's a big one. What costs police departments probably the most in civil lawsuits are excessive use of force. But what do departments put the least amount of money into that could save them, you know, tons of money. You know,
yeah,
is what that comes out to.
yeah, I wasn't privy to all the lawsuits or anything like that in the last, say, 10 years. um but I didn't hear of them. It wasn't a common it wasn't a common thing. We were involved in a lot of lawsuits. um and you know the conversation I had with the chief at the time was, when he came in, I said, look, I'm all about training. It's your department. You could, it's already been here. You can take it away. It's on you, you know. And you know, I'm a pretty big firm believer that training has reduced the liability,
Absolutely.
you know, overall.
Yeah,
So
totally agree with you. Well, Cato, tell us a little bit about your business, what you do out there. I know you have a Instagram site. Um,
yeah,
who
so
can check you out?
the business is Rectitude Training LLC on social media. You can go to the websites, rectitudetraining.com. You
Oh, you
can
guys
email
do.
me at rectitudetraining@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Basically, I provide uh, training for law enforcement agencies. I also teach jujitsu to departments. I'm also offering some civilian stuff on the civilian side, and I'm new to this business stuff. So I've after this, actually August was my first anniversary. So um, I've realized like I got to kind of restructure my year. I got to become a better planner, which I'm horrible at. So those are two big goals that I have to work on for the next year. And I'm gonna kind of put my head down and move forward kind of guy. So that's hopefully what I'm gonna do. Um, I have a bunch of courses again here in the Chicagoland area, predominantly in the northern suburbs, where I found a couple nice homes to do a lot of training, and looking for anything in the Chicagoland area. Actually, I've actually been offered to come out to Boston. So that's looking like winter, which I'm not super fond of, but
No, what's the worst that could happen?
I, yeah, I got bad arthritis and I really like warm weather. So going to Boston in the winter doesn't really sound super appealing, but they got a bunch of good guys out there and I'm looking forward to doing some training. So
And you guys do topics like is two officer control tactics, weapons retention type stuff, and single
yeah,
leg
so
tactics.
um my I have three main courses, and to me though those are the issues I see in as far as major problems in law enforcement. One is the big seller is two officer control and arrest tactics, then wrestling for law enforcement, and then I titled the course Get Up, basically because every cop I've talked to said, oh yeah, I'm just going to get up if I fall down or if I get knocked, they were taken down or whatever. And no,
Sounds
you're
good.
not.
Sounds good.
Um, so it's a get up class, but on the flip side, because it's a partnered class, right? When you're training jujitsu, it's not all about the bottom guy. Sometimes the top guy's got to do something, right?
Right.
So for the top guy, we discuss a lot. We discuss and I teach them how to pin, because again, I think that's another issue in law enforcement, that most cops just don't understand how to pin their opponents to the ground. So as the bottom guy is working to get up, the top guy is working to keep him down. So you may not get up. Depends on how good the guy on top was paying attention during class.
And how much they
um,
trained afterwards.
right. And so it's a dual purpose class. It sounds like it's just all about getting up, but it's actually about pinning also. So um and then as far as like the weapons retention class, I was an adjunct instructor with C4, Chad's company,
Yep.
and I went out to Ohio and I was the assistant for Jay. That went really really well. Ohio, that area of Ohio is beautiful. So and again, they had a real pro police, pro training chief out there. So and then I've actually discussed, and I'd actually like to do a weapons retention class, but um, there's, anytime you're doing weapon retention issues, especially in the holster, you're looking at a potential a lot of damage to holsters, and a lot of these guys are coming to classes with their duty holsters, and so if you're not reading the fine print and you damage a holster, you're going to void your warranty. You're going to potentially cause issues to your own holster, and the last thing I want to do is have a guy leave training, go out, jam his duty weapon in his holster, thinking it's okay, and he's got a crack in, or some a part's broken or whatever. So I'm actually looking at trying to procure some holsters, um, even if some of them are broken, like just piece them together, and you'll get a holster as part of the class for training. But
Well, that's
that's
we'll talk about that offline. One of the things that I actually do with my guys is I train with no retentions, and we'll talk about
Sure.
that. We'll talk about that on a future podcast. But I'll get with you.
Right.
Get with you once once we stop
Right.
recording and
I
talk
mean,
about
even
that.
just a shell, right?
Yeah,
So,
that adds a whole
yeah,
new element.
right. And then I think the other course that I've done it at my old police department, but confined space. I had a closet that was designated as Cato's closet, and
Get some
it
wholesome
brought on
fun.
a lot of anxiety to a lot of my guys.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so those are some courses that are kind of in the works. So
Sweet. Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on this week and being a guest. Hopefully, we'll be able to have you on in the future to talk more defensive tactics. More about your business as it develops.
awesome,
As I do every week, I remind everybody to get out there and be better. Be better for themselves. Be better for their family. Be better for their friends, and most importantly, to be better for those that they encounter daily in their jobs.
awesome. Thanks, Lorenzo.